Joining me now on DIRTRACKR Conversations is Jeremy Elliott, owner and proprietor of SprintCarUnlimited.com. And Jeremy, my first question right out of the gate is, am I the reason you started a daily show? Just be honest.
Yes.
Just tell me what it is.
Yes.
Were you copying me? Be honest.
Yes.
That's not what you were supposed to say. You were supposed to say no.
I'm honest. I'm actually sometimes too honest. So when it comes to writing, but no, I actually, I watched David Gravel with the YouTube thing, and it's another opportunity to expand the brand. I've seen what you've done, and it just looked like a good thing to do to build up the subscriber base and obviously promote the website and some of the other things we were doing. So I kind of took a page out of your book. You do a really good job with this, and also it's timely. Like I could write probably a column or an opinion piece in an hour, but I can tape that in 5-6 minutes. So, and I can give it out free, and again push people to the website. So yes, you get some credit, David Gravel gets some credit, and I've talked to Dave Byro III, DB3 Incorporated. He's been trying to get me to do it for a year and a half or so. So I took the plunge.
Give me an idea, like, this is your full-time job now, SprintCarUnlimited.com. And, you used to write for the paper up in Harrisburg, I think. And, but like, what does your day look like now when, are you just kind of on the phone all day? Are you writing all day? Like, give me an idea of what your kind of standard day looks like.
Well, people probably think I get up at noon. My co-host on the podcast, Ryan Hand, thinks I get up at noon. No, I get up, I usually can't sleep past 7:30. So just because of my days years and years ago, it's kind of ingrained in me. So I wake up and I start checking social media, start checking the website, just a lot of seeing what's going on in case I miss something overnight. Then it's usually on the phone. I spend a good part of my day on the phone, either getting stories or getting things that I can't write, which really sucks. I have to say that. I just spend a lot of time on the phone. Usually that goes until about 2:30. I go see my daughter for about 2 hours, and I come back, and it's basically the same thing. And it's whether it's writing or being on the phone, it's something usually that's always involved in racing. And it sometimes doesn't end until on a weekday, it doesn't end until about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And on the weekends during racing season, it usually doesn't end until about 3 a.m.
When you are working for the newspaper and tell me about like the kind of thought process of getting away from the newspaper and starting your own thing and all of the work and thoughts, like, how quickly, too, did it take before you were like comfortable making that move? Like, I'm just curious of that whole kind of transition process from the paper to SprintCarUnlimited.com.
For me, usually my best decisions are split second or come with very little thought. And it's because yes, that can be impulsive, but then again, it's usually what has served me well. So at the newspaper, I was covering the NFL. I covered a lot of different sports ranging from field hockey to racing, and that changed at various times over the years. So I was sitting at a state girls field hockey game, and some stuff was going on in racing that I couldn't do. And I felt that was a problem because racing was more of a main beat. As you know, the newspaper business, they started just kind of cutting back and asking the guys there to do more, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But it took away from my main beats. So I was sitting at a game and I'm just like, this is crap. And another night, Dale Blaney, I was on the phone with him at a state soccer game, which I don't like soccer. And in fact, it's the sport I dislike the most to cover. So I'm sitting there on the phone with him, and I'm kind of writing this Dale Blaney story about, it was a Zemco car and all the stuff going on there. And I was watching this game, and it just got to be too much. So one day in November, I was sitting at home, and I just said, you know what? It's time to take the plunge. We're going to take the risk. And then I was at PRI, and actually the final decision was made about 2 weeks later. I was on the phone with Colton Gauss, who is the general manager of Babs Motor Speedway. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come to PRI?" And I said, "That's it. I'm going to do it." And then I went to PRI.
Who, as you kind of make that transition and try to get the site off the ground and things like that, who are people you kind of leaned on for advice?
Um, well, there really wasn't many people as far as sprint car racing to lean on about that. I talked to Michael Rigsby once about it, but very brief. After that, it was just, I went to a company outside of racing to get the site built. I thought it was important to go do that outside of racing because they had knowledge that I didn't have, and then the rest was just, hey, this is what I want on the site, and this is what I want it to be, and I honestly can say that it's still not quite where I want it to be. It's kind of like building a house. You build the house, and then after it's built, you realize 4 or 5 things that maybe you do differently. So it's always a work in progress.
SprintCarUnlimited.com is obviously behind a paywall, and you've got some sponsors and advertisers and things like that too. But how did you put that model together? How do you decide on pricing? Like, what were all of those things that went into that?
Well, and that was difficult. I wanted to be cheaper than some of the trade papers, and I feel being specialized with SprintCarUnlimited.com, I think you go to a trade paper, you get a lot of things. I just wanted to focus on sprint car racing. And so I wanted to be cheaper than the trade papers. And it's actually dropped. It was $50 initially. Now it's 45. And I've changed the pricing here and there. And it's just trial and error. I didn't want to soak people. I know some sites are, $100. I know some are $75. I just wanted to make it affordable where they could get good, reliable information. I talked to my father about it, and I kind of asked him, "Hey, what would you pay for a site?" I said, "Is $50 too much?" He goes, "No." So then it just kind of morphed into that, and I've dropped it down to 45 now, and you could see another drop real soon.
What about your kind of like network of people that help you do things? Like I know you've got photographers and I know you've got some different writers. Is that something you always wanted to do, was kind of expand out and have other people contribute, or is that something that's just kind of happened organically as you've built the site?
Well, you definitely need photographers. I've taken pictures before, and that's fine, but I'm a writer, and it's kind of I'm sure it's tough to wear 14 hats at a race. So you're going to take away, and the product's going to suffer. Uh, it's just friendships, relationships. I like to pay people because I think in this industry, people don't get paid enough, even if it's a little bit. Um, I wish I could do more in that regard right now. I just can't. And it's not quite where I want to be. That's a big, big one that isn't where I want it to be. But people have called me up and asked me to do stuff, and I've said sure. And I kind of like Jacob Horde in Ohio. I wanted somebody in Ohio. It's a big market. I think it's an untapped market. So I brought him on. He's very raw. It's not what he does for a living. He doesn't have training, but I can work with that. He works hard, and I care more about somebody who works hard and who's willing to maybe learn how to kind of be a reporter. Uh, that's more important to me. I can teach somebody how to write or give advice. Effort is a hard thing to teach. So I'm always looking for people. That's always a work in progress.
How do you balance the kind of race day stuff in terms of like what races you're going to go to versus what races you're going to watch on pay-per-view? Like, are you able to to watch everything? Are you watching things on demand? Like, how do you kind of balance all of those things?
Well, first off, I hate the idea of writing from pay per view. As an old time newspaper guy, I'm 49. I guess that's not old time, but as a newspaper guy, I hate the idea that publications write from pay per view. I had to do it from Florida this year. I had some family stuff I had to take care of. I despise it. I hate it. It's not something that's going to be done regularly on my website. It's just something I don't believe in. So when it's all about going to the races. How do I determine where I go is based on the event. Uh, Obviously, the big events, you have to be there. Kings Royal, Knoxville, Charlotte for the World Finals. I go to Let's Race 2 at Eldora to hit some of the wingless crowd. Obviously, all the races around Central PA. I'm still trying to get the Trophy Cup. That's a job, it seems like. Um, but I've been to 360 Nationals and other ones. You got to hit the big events. That's what drives the model. And also when I'm around here, it's you try and give everybody a little bit of love. You try and bounce back and forth between Lincoln and Port Royal on a Saturday night based on the show that's, the pay or how big the show is, or hey, I've been at Port Royal 2 weeks. I need to go to Lincoln now. And everything else is just going to Friday night at Williams Grove. If there's a Sunday race somewhere, you got to be there. Or during the week, you just, if there's no conflict, there's no decision. You just go.
What are those things in terms of content that you're not doing at sprintcarunlimited.com that you would like to do in the future?
More.
More.
I guess, what I'd like, how I envision this turning out when I can look at it and go, which anybody that knows me, satisfaction is not something that comes easy for me. I could write the best story ever and I'll pick it apart. And I'm very critical personally. So, but if I was going to have the site the way I want it, where I look at it and go, okay, it's exactly where I want it, is the streaming part. That's one avenue, which I'm sure we'll get into in a minute. And then I want every area of the country covered. I want a writer in California. I want a writer in the Midwest, and I want a writer in Ohio. I want a writer with ASCS. And then of course I'll be everywhere to where I can get. So that's kind of ideally what I want. That's hard to do. I think people think writers grow in trees. They don't. It's not. Good writers are hard to find, and I want this. I'd like to help people do that. Not saying I'm the best writer in the country. I'm saying I have a lot of experience with other sports, and I'd like to give that. And if I can help somebody else become a better writer, I'll do that.
Like one of the reasons I started my own site is, I think there is a big enough market for all of these things. I think there is, business for all of this. And I want to help elevate it as much as I can, across the board. But from your perspective, as somebody who is running a site that people pay for and who's jumping into streaming now, what do you think of kind of the market size and the business? Like, is it possible to make a decent living and cover racing in this country, dirt racing in this country?
It's very difficult. I think depends what division you're covering. If you're covering late models, it's been done. Michael Rigsby's turned that into a dirt on dirt into a monster. And credit to him for the way he's done it. And he did it so far ahead of everybody else. And I think that helped tremendously. Sprint car racing's different. It's tough. People might think that I'm making all kinds of money. I can tell you I'm in a 650 square foot apartment. It's difficult because there's a lot of free stuff out there. And I think sometimes fans, it's tough to differentiate between good, accurate, and maybe just something I'm going to look at on Facebook. Plus you're battling the PR machine now. More teams are picking up PR guys and PR firms. So you're battling that. There's just a lot of stuff there to go against when you're in sprint car racing. So it's tough. I'm okay, but it could definitely be better. And the way you got to do that is you got to diversify. You got to give people more.
Tell me about the streaming stuff. I talked about it this morning on the Daily Show. Your announcement comes out. You're going to partner with Mike Mallett, start SprintCarUnlimited.tv. Tell me about the thought process to advance or to expand into streaming and why that's, why you think that's a good place to go.
Well, I don't think streaming's going away. Some people might think that it was a COVID thing, but it's not a COVID thing. This is something that's going to be here. I talked to Mike Mallett about 2 months ago, and his model works great in the modified arena. And I'd like to bring it to sprint cars. It's different than a subscription model, which I'm sure is going to get some blowback, and that's fine. I understand it. The subscription model is very fan friendly, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, the racetracks could be doing better, and that's where our focus is. We want to drive people to the grandstands because at the end of the day, if people aren't in the grandstands, the tracks aren't going to make money no matter how much money they make off pay-per-view. You can't buy hot dogs, hamburgers, and French fries sitting on your couch. So the racetracks have got to do well, and our model is very geared towards racetracks. It's $1.99 more than the general admission price for a reason. Our first priority is to drive people to the racetracks, and we're a secondary outlet for them to take in the races. If say they're states away, it's 40 degrees out and they can't go, or something else. Maybe they have a prior commitment up until 7 o'clock and they can't get to the races because it's an hour drive, and they can pop us on. So we just wanted to do something for the racetracks while still trying to remain fan friendly with some of the things we're going to do for our broadcasts that we'll see when they roll around. There's some things, I have a vision of what I want the broadcast to look like, and I don't want it to be traditional to what you see now. So, it's just that, and it's just another revenue stream. Obviously, I have the website. You want to cover all your bases. You want to have advertisers, and you want to be good to them. You want to provide a site for the fans where they can get good, accurate information. No rumors. I don't do rumors. And they get that for a very affordable price. And also then the streaming for that end as well. So you just want to cover all your bases as a business and have a total media company.
I'm going to ask this question. I don't want it to sound like it's disrespect to Mike Mallett, because I certainly am a big fan of Mike. I had him on the show not long ago, but
Yep.
In terms of partners, why is Mallett the guy to partner with here? I know you have some connections to some other people in the streaming world. So why Mallett and why with him?
Mike Mallett and I know each other for quite a while. He'll make the joke that I used to make fun of him for driving 4 hours down to Susquehanna. I called him I called him dumb because he's a teacher and he'd drive back then that night. So, but Mike Mallett and I have a very good relationship, and it's his model. I really believe in his model. I think for racetracks, and it's funny because I've been critical of some racetracks and I've been complimentary of some racetracks, but at the end of the day, we've got to all work together to make the industry thrive. And if I can help racetracks through streaming off his model, which I think he's done a great job with that model and building it up, and the passion he has, it's not just about money. He's done a good job with it, and I liked it. And if I like something, I'll endorse it, and I want to be a part of it.
I feel like it's not really a secret that you've kind of been critical at times of the streaming stuff and the revenue and the shares and all of that type of thing.
Yep.
Why is it such a big deal for you to share with the racetracks? And what is the feedback that you get from racetracks when you approach them about doing a streaming deal with them?
Well, first off, if there's no racetracks, how's there going to be racing? So my job, or our job at SprintCarUnlimited.tv, which is powered by Dirt Track Digest TV, our job is to make the racetracks money. Yeah, sure, we want to get paid too. I'm not going to lie. I mean, this isn't free, but the racetracks get a very healthy percentage of what we make. And we feel over a certain amount of races that we can make the racetracks more than what they get. So that's why that's important. They got to make money, because if they don't make money, they don't have races. The teams don't make money. The fans don't have enjoyment. And it just doesn't work. So the racetracks like it. I mean, obviously, one of the concerns is because of the subscription model being so cheap for fans, will they buy it? The numbers so far, I've ran some numbers at certain tracks, and the answer is yes. There have been other pay-per-view companies who have used the per race model, which I guess is the proper way to say it, the per race model, and have been okay with it and have gotten decent numbers where we can make the tracks some decent money. So, it's just one of those things that you can't really do the subscription model if everybody else is doing it too. That's kind of the extra or the addition to that. You can't really, you don't want to do the same thing. So it's just a different option for racetracks. We have 18 races so far, and we're looking to get more. So there's a couple tracks that have who believe in our model. There's tracks who believe in our model who maybe won't go with it just because they have to answer to other people. So we'll see how it takes off.
How is this going to be in terms of like logistics? Are you going to be helping with stream stuff? Are you kind of leaving that to Mallett's people? Like, how is that going to break down?
I'm going to be a working partner. So let's say we have a race at one track and I need to go to a race somewhere else because it's a bigger event. I'm going to go to the racetrack that we have pay-per-view at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and help set everything up. And then I'm going to fly and go, but we will have a producer there. We will have camera people there. We will have people in place who can get stuff done. And I'm putting a team together to do that. And that's another thing too, is putting a team together, and you're only as good as your team, and they're only as good as I can be as somebody who can help give guidance. So they obviously, you want to be present. You don't really believe in something if the people who developed it aren't around. So either I or Mallett will be there, or we will have somebody produce there, and I'll be there for as long as I can, and then go, say, to Port Royal or Lincoln if I have to. And if not, I will stay there. You could see me doing some pit reporting. You could see me doing some producing. You could see me doing whatever is necessary to make it successful. But it's not going to take away from the website, and that's critical. Mallett and I have talked, and he knows that I still have to do the website. So I still have to write. I still have to do all these things, which again, this opens up opportunities to expand the team as far as writers as well with SprintCarUnlimited.com.
Well, and I hate to tell you, but Mallett told me on his show that he gives out his phone number for tech support. So you have to do that too. If he's doing it, you got to do it.
I give out my cell phone to everybody. So it is a working phone and personal phone as well. So, hey, anybody who's ever had a question or wanted to yell at me or anything else, it's right on the site. You can do it. It's fine.
How, like, give me an example of a time you got yelled at. I know
Which one?
Well, just give me one. But for example, like my brother wrote something when he was the PR guy for the World Battle Sprint Car Series, and something had happened with McCarl, Terry McCarl, and Terry came up to him the next day and confronted him about it. And he said, "Terry, did I say anything that didn't happen?" "Well, no." "Well, was there anything that was inaccurate?" "Well, no." "So what are you mad about?" And he said, Terry was like, "Okay, yeah, you're right," and left him alone about it. But give me an example of a time that you got blasted for something that you wrote.
Well, I'll give you two, because the one's epic. It happened when I almost first started writing. Deval Dressler, who is ran the 358 series, the Cars series in Pennsylvania. He was at Silver Spring, so you know how long ago it was. The series was there, and they just couldn't complete laps. I got mad and wrote a column how his drivers couldn't complete laps. The terrible, whatever it was. Boy, he found me in the pit area. And Jerry Regal, who was kind of my mentor, anybody who long time sprint car fan knows who Jerry Regal was. Obviously, he passed away, but he ratted me out to Deval. And Deval is this big guy. He comes up, he gets about this far away from me, and he's yelling and screaming. Just laying into me. Everybody in the pit area stopped. Deval can yell. And I couldn't yell back at him, because in my line of work, I believe you just go, "I'm sorry you didn't like it." or "Hey, was I factually wrong?" Like your brother did. And to this day, Deval and I talk. So I want him back somewhere along the line. Another one's Kerry Madsen. Kerry Madsen was mad at me once because and it wasn't about him necessarily. He was mad at me down in Charlotte because I wrote about the provisional system. It happened to Williams Grove, and I think it was him and Joey Saldana and another person got provisionals, and they ran like the C main. And I just don't like it. I think you get what you earn, and that's it. I get that they're protecting their guys. So I went down to Charlotte. This was after the National Open, and I walked up, "Hey, Kerry, how you doing?" And it was about the next year. And he said, "I don't know if I want to talk to you." And I'm like, okay. And you got to remember, I forget what I write. I mean, when you write 450 stories a year, you tend to forget some stuff. And I'm just looking at him and go, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, you called my team mediocre." And I went, "No, your performance was mediocre." There's a difference. I said, "I think you have a good team. You've won the Kings Royal, you won the Ironman, you won whatever." And we agreed to disagree about the provisional system, and that's fine. And I'm good with that. I'm not always right. I'm not one of these people who thinks I'm always right. You may say something today, and I go, "Hey, that's a good point." But we talk to this day. So look, if I found out, if you're fair, you don't make things personal. That's a big thing. And you just stick to the facts. And if you want to base opinion off those facts, that's fine. But you got to be factual. That's the most important thing.
In talking about the provisionals, actually, this is a good transition because this is kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about. You actually did a daily show about the provisional stuff, and this
Hmm.
kind of came out of the James McFadden thing about him,
Hmm.
not being here and all of that. And I'm curious, like, what is it about the provisional thing that bothers you? I feel like with the Outlaws, except for World Finals and DIRTRACKR Nationals, where the guys get unlimited, you get 2 in the first half of the year and 2 in the second half of the year,
Right.
and like I feel like you hear about people saying it's like, well, guys like Donnie, Brad, Logan, like those guys aren't going to need those provisionals. Like very rarely are you even going to see those guys in a B main at
Yeah.
all. So it's like it's not going to affect the championship. And then so you hear people say, but what about guys that are 8th or 9th in points? And it's like, does it really matter when we get down to the guys that are 8th and 9th in points whether they take a provisional a couple of times a year? Like I don't understand the dislike of the provisional system. And on some level I get it, it's competition, you want guys to earn their spot in, but is it really hurting anyone to have a couple of provisionals a year?
Does Tom Brady get a provisional if he would have lost the Super Bowl?
But we're not talking about the Super. That's what I'm saying. Like
But,
with
but wait a
Donnie
minute.
and Brad and those guys, like you don't see it. Like Brad didn't win a championship because he got a provisional. Like no one's winning a championship because they got a provisional.
Yes, but if you and you know all too well what they pay in the World of Outlaw point standings, it could mean that for a guy who's 8th and 9th, it obviously means money, or it could mean money. Um, Look, I understand. Here's my big divide on it. Now, it used to be worse when you got more.
Mm-hmm.
So when they made that transition to 2, I can accept it now. Now I'm okay. I'm not as adamant about it as I used to be because they did cut it back a little bit. However, we keep saying about this being a sport, okay? And I've covered other sports. I've been in other sports. And you could say, well, it's not like that. Well, maybe it should be. Maybe you should get what you earn. And you're right, Donnie, Brad. Although didn't Donnie take one last year?
Did he take one last year? I remember a California race in recent years where he was
Yeah,
flipped over
it,
somewhere and needed one to
yeah,
get in.
yeah. I mean, is it going to affect the point title? No, and you're right about that. And like I said, I've softened on it since they've made some changes to it. Um, I'm just big on you get what you earn, and it's a generational thing probably because growing up there were no second chances. I mean, they get a lot of chances. They have, and now with the format, I think the World of Outlaw format to me is the best. I love it. They've done a great job with it. You time trial, you get what you earn, and in the heat race, you get what you earn. You can race forward, you can race to the dash, you can time last, race to the dash. Then if you don't make it, you get this, the alphabet, however, depending on how many cars are there. You get chances. Do we need another chance? I mean, how many? When's the end? When's that end? You know, I just, it's just one of those things that it comes getting what you earn. I mean, I understand your thought process, and and I'm not as hard about it as I used to be because I do only get 2.
In terms of, and I guess the provisionals that I have a problem with is like the track provisionals, like where a local guy will get
Oh
into a
yeah,
feature. Like I can see it with the outlaw guys, or if you're a full timer with a tour, because like you are earning that, you're out there all season
right.
long, you're putting in the miles. But like a guy at a track who gets a provisional, like I definitely don't like that because you haven't done that. Like why do you get a free pass in just because you race at a track? Like that stuff I don't understand, but I do get your point there. And I guess the other question that we talked about, like you talked about the outlaw format, is I feel like that formats in dirt racing are just entirely way too complicated. Like
Oh yeah.
the outlaw format is as simple as
Yeah.
it gets, and even it's
Yep.
complicated at times. But when you start bringing in inversions and passing points and all of these things, I don't know how. Like I've been in around dirt racing now, like basically in a full time capacity for going on 8 years. And like, I don't understand half of the things that are going on. So how can you expect somebody who's a new fan to know what's going on? And like Pennsylvania, I feel like is a perfect example of that with some of the inversions and stuff like that. But like, are we doing ourselves any favors with these ridiculous formats?
Look, racing has a habit of not doing favors for itself. And look, I think simplistic is better. I mean, look, you know why, and I'm sure you're well aware, NASCAR doesn't penalize guys after the race because they want people that when they leave the racetrack, they know who won. It's as simple as that. So yeah, you're right. The formats, there's too many of them. They're too complicated. You need an abacus and a slide rule to figure it out. You're sitting in the stands with your buddy. Look, just how, I want to be able to, okay, that guy won. He's going to the dash. Besides the outlaw format, just giving you what you earn, which is a big thing with me. But no, you're right. I think there's too many formats. I wish there was more standard formats. Um, my co-host and I, Ryan Han, go at it numerous times on the podcast about different formats. I don't like inversions simply because in this day and age of equality and parity, which is death to racing, um, parity's not good for racing because you can't pass, especially on the half miles we have here. So it shows up at like a Williams Grove more so than it does at a Hopstad or someplace like that. So formats, you got to be very, very, very careful with formats to get good racing, but you don't want to manufacture good racing because usually if you're trying to manufacture good racing, it doesn't work.
The other thing that I'm kind of curious your thoughts on in terms of formats is like these events on the schedule between all the different, especially open wheel series where it's a different format. So we give show up points only. It's the Knoxville Nationals. It's the
Yeah.
Kings Royal. Like I am of the opinion that if you race, pay points. Like I don't want to see a guy that won a race get 90 points as the same as the guy that finished 24th got 90 points. Like if it's big enough that you're going to put on an event, pay points for the whole thing. Like where do you stand on show up points versus full points?
All I care is that it's consistent. Like last year, the Capitani, they went full points, but they normally don't for events like that. And it's invitation only. And it just normally for those types of events, they have show up points, but last year they didn't because of number. I just want consistency because they had show up points for the Jackson Nationals. So I just want consistency. Show up points, I don't get too bent out of shape. It's kind of one of those things like, is that the thing that's going to make you write something? No, probably not. I just want consistency across the board. So I'm okay if they're points, full points. I'm okay if the Knoxville Nationals are full points. I'm okay if any race is full points, but I'm also okay if it's show up points as long as the Kings Royal then with the heat inversions and how they do that is show up points. Don't make one and not the other because then you're being selective. And then it affects things more because you have guys who are better at Eldora and guys who are better at Knoxville. Or you're Donnie Schatz and you're good everywhere except Hopstad. So or California. But so I just care that consistency is the key for me.
Kind of shifting gears to the Outlaws, talking about the championship this year and who are the guys to look at. We saw this week, Open Red puts out an episode of the podcast talking to the big three, Donnie, Brad, Logan. You've talked about this a lot on your various shows. Why are we not talking about David Gravel more? Like, why is it the big three and not the big four? Like, how is he not in this conversation? Like, if he doesn't miss those races last year, like he is right there within maybe a point or two, maybe wins this thing. So like, why is he not in the conversation?
I don't know. And I think and here's the ironic part. If I was giving the big three in sprint car racing, the elite, the guys that I think are elite, the three drivers aren't the three drivers running for the Outlaw title. It's Brad Sweet, Donnie Schatz, and David Gravel. Logan's getting close. I'm not saying Logan's not good. But why David Gravel doesn't get consideration? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's a new team. Maybe because we're prisoners of the moment and we have short-term memories. And last year he wasn't in the point battle because he missed a couple races. Maybe people just don't process that and view him as a contender. Maybe it's does Cody Jacobs and David gel? I don't know. I don't know how you get 4 fourth place finishes. If you would have bet that in Vegas, that had to go off at 10,000 to 1, down at Volusia. So I think David's in it. I think David's a contender. David times well. I think David's a really, really, really good driver. And also, I think he's gotten a lot better at being a guy who can come into the pit area and communicate with the crew chief what he needs, what's comfortable, what's going on with the car. So I think he's a complete package. I have no clue why people wouldn't keep him or put him in that mix.
As we kind of look back on Volusia and with your experience covering the sport, how much can we really take away from what happened at Volusia? You hear all the time about the engine issues that always happen there, and the guys, they don't take it as seriously because it doesn't really reflect on the rest of the season. But as fans, when we look back at that stuff, how seriously should we take the results that came out of there?
I think more so than before because look, last year the three winners down there were the top three in points. I mean that stat doesn't lie. Donnie Schatz always does well at Volusia. always in the top three. Last year, I think it was the first year since 2004 he wasn't first or second. Brad Sweet, really good at evolution, gets off to a good start. He's your two-time defending champion. So I think it's changing. I think maybe before, maybe 3-4 years ago, probably not so much. Danny Dietrich will tell you he can't use any of the notes that he had from last year and this year, which were far and away his best Volusia and DIRTRACKR Nationals appearances ever. He can't use any of that back here, but I think there's a measure of confidence. I think there's a measure of getting out of there in a good spot. I know David Gravel, I talked to him after Volusia. He was ecstatic about getting out of there as good as he did, because normally Volusia's can be hit or miss. He's won there, but there's times he's had motor trouble there. So I think it's getting more important, but I don't think it's the end all be all.
What do you think about Donnie Schatz and that team kind of going forward? It seems like between the switch over from Ricky to Scuba, plus the Ford engine stuff, like he just hasn't been the same Donnie that we saw, obviously, the previous decade or decade and a half in the last couple of years. And I'm wondering if, we're not seeing maybe a similar effect of like a Tiger Woods situation, right? Where when he's on tour winning all the time, guys are almost afraid to go up against him. And he probably won even more of that. And it's like, is the same true with Donnie? Like, where guys maybe like a little afraid to challenge him because he was so good, and maybe now they're not because he's shown to be a little more human than we thought he was?
I have him to win the points this year. I think the biggest problem Donnie Schatz has had is the Ford motor program. They made him do it from the ground up. There's some changes they had to make to it for it to, I guess, be able to be used. And Toyota doesn't have to go through that because it's basically a Chevy block. So I think Ford was at a real disadvantage, through this development stage. Shaver's involved now. I think we've seen, Donnie was going to win his 300th win, Evolution, until the mag went. So I think we're past that. I think he's going to win double-digit races this year. I just think it was a lull in what they were trying to do and develop that Ford motor program. I do think I watch Brad Sweet now and I see Donnie Schatz. Watch him race. He races the same way. It's almost like he's admitted that he's watched film of Donnie from Knoxville and what he's had to do to win that race and really be good there. I think I don't think Brad has any fear of running against Donnie. I think that has helped, obviously. And hey, he can be beat. There's probably a little bit of that from a psychological standpoint, but I don't think Donnie Schatz is diminished in any way. I just think it was the Ford motor program.
And with Donnie, do you think that, like, one of the things I feel like we've seen here in the last couple of years, especially like with guys like Larson coming in, Larson drives so damn hard when he's in a race.
Yeah.
Is it a disadvantage for Donnie that he's so clean? And it's like, it's one of the things I've always respected about Donnie is like, Donnie will not, he doesn't feed right rears. He doesn't run over people, but like at a certain point when everybody else ramps up the aggression, like, is it a disadvantage for him to not be that way?
Well, sure. He lost the Knoxville Nationals to Jason Johnson because of that. It wasn't that. If you watch the last two laps, and I was impressed with what Jason did. I'm not diminishing that. I was more impressed with what Donnie did over the last two laps. He was probably 3/4 of a straightaway back and made it up. He started driving over the berm in 3 and 4 and hopping it, and he almost got him at the end. You're right, though. Donnie doesn't race like that, and I'll tell you what, the competition better be glad he doesn't, because he could and probably should sometimes. I saw him be a little more aggressive last year's Silver Cup, and he outdrove Larson and outdrove Sweet. I'm not going to say he had the better car, but he outdrove him. But yeah, the thing with Donnie is, and the advantage Kyle Larson's great. I'm not taking anything away, but he doesn't have to race there. Like, he can race 3 outlaw shows. If he trashes something, he can go away and come back 2 weeks later. Donnie can't do that. I think Donnie always looks at big picture. I think he looks at his guys and putting it back together. And, and I just, like you said, I just don't think he drives that way. But if he did, he'd probably have twice as many wins.
In looking at the All-Stars this year, I know this is something you've talked about on your daily show in terms of like who can win the championship. And it seems like Marks, Eliason, probably the top. And then maybe a guy like Courtney is kind of behind them. But My concern for like, and not concern, but it's like when you look around, it seems like it's completely wide open. And like, we've seen Eliason do well here the last couple of years up against Reitzel, even had an outside shot towards the end of last year, but like he has some consistency issues at times. Brett Marks has some consistency issues at times. Like, when was the last time we saw a championship chase for any major sprint car series that was this completely wide open?
Well, the Outlaws this year.
But I feel like the outlaw thing is different, right? The outlaw thing is like it's wide open because there's so many really, really good guys.
Yeah,
Whereas,
they have
whereas
the
the
top
all
7
stars,
guys in the country.
yeah, the all stars I feel like is just wide open because you just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, and no, and the big thing when I break down the All Stars is obviously Eliason's the heir apparent to Reitzel. He's finished second to him. Needs to be more consistent, like you said. Brent Marks's time trial issues, I can't figure that out. I don't think Barry Jackson can figure it out. I don't think Brent can figure that out. But it doesn't hurt him as much in All Star events because of their format. And we go back to the formats. So yeah, I don't know what to expect there. I do think it's a 3-horse race. But I think Tyler Courtney's in the mix. I think Tyler Courtney's a really, really good driver. I think he's, other than Buddy Kofoid, even though he ran wing stuff, coming back to the wing stuff and being able to contend for a title like that, I think Tyler Courtney's the only guy who can do that. And I've been really impressed with what they've been able to do in a short amount of time, especially last year at Port Royal. We wrote about him running All Stars this year, and this could be a guy to watch. So it's a 3-horse race, and it's tough to break down who's going to take that.
I'll let you go here pretty quick. I want to know what your thoughts are on Pennsylvania this year. What do who are we? Is it Dietrich? Is it Freddie Raymer again? Like, who are the guys that we really need to kind of keep an eye on in Pennsylvania this year?
You said it. It's Danny Dietrich, Freddie Raymer, Lance Deweese, Anthony Macri. And each one has can Danny Dietrich stay on top? Freddie Raymer, does he get to double-digit wins, and can he continue kind of that string of winning track titles? He won the Williams Grove title and Lincoln title last year, and I think you could see Dietrich maybe run for it this year and not go to Port Royal as much. And then you have Anthony Macri. How much does he travel? Does he continue to climb that ladder, so to speak? Yes, it seems like sometimes it's feast or famine with him, except outside of Port Royal. But I was really impressed with him, how he won at BAPS last year. He won at Sealands Grove. Again, outside of comfortable confines of Port Royal. Hasn't won at the Grove yet in a 410, which is surprising. So each one has something different. Lance Deweese is only going to run 35 times, 35 to 40. When he runs, he's going to be in the top 5, or he's going to be winning. So what we're missing here now is that young talent. We don't have the young talent, say, California has with a Corey Day, JJ Hickle, some of the other guys out, Caleb Henry Montgomery out there. They have a lot of young talent and really are producing the best young talent in the country. We're not even close to that. And I think that's one of the things we're lacking, which is why we have 4 guys at the top, and the rest are just kind of getting a win here and there.
What do you think about Macri, like in terms of like what the future holds from him? It seems like he's out traveling more, trying to get more experience. Like, is he a guy that you think is going to go be an all-star, go be a full-time outlaw? Or do you think he's going to guy that's going to be more like Dietrich or somebody like that sticks around Pennsylvania?
I think that's yet to be determined. I would have put him on the All-Star tour this year. Once Reitzel left, I think Macri could be in that mix. Obviously, Jim Shuttlesworth is the crew chief, and I think he's going to retire from his job soon if he hasn't already. So I think that comes into play there as well. So I think Anthony Macri could end up traveling at some point. I know that's what he wants to do, but as we know, things got to align. You got to kind of stay focused on that. I think he's young yet. I think he needs to kind of be a little more focused at times. And then he can do that. But I thought maybe he'd go all-star racing this year. I would have been fine with that. I thought that would have been a good move. And I don't know, you might see him run all-stars next year, as early as next year.
Are you having fun doing this, Jeremy? I feel like sometimes you get a little curmudgeon-y on us, and I'm wondering if you're having a good time.
You know what? It's not that I'm curmudgeon. It's just I cover it for what it is. It's a real sport. So sometimes it's not all happy, joy, rainbows and unicorns. Like the Bristol.
It's entertainment, Jeremy. It's supposed to be fun.
Exactly. So you also got to make it real. So look, the Bristol thing's a perfect example. I'm surprised you didn't ask me about that. I got some comments because I said they don't belong there. They don't belong there. If we're going to talk about safety, they don't belong there. That's fact. That's not, that's not me being a curmudgeon. It's just me. That's what I believe. Look, I do enjoy it, or I wouldn't do it. I'm a kind of guy that I have a lot of passion for it. When I write something that's critical, like the Outlaws is a perfect example, and I'm sure you have been in some of those things where people have been mad in that building. But one thing I like is Chris Dolak always said I was fair. I can criticize you 1 minute, and then I'm going to come out the next minute and say the World of Outlaws have the best product by far in the country, and there is no doubt about that. They do. The racing's better. So it's just about being fair for me. I do have a good time doing it. I do like what I do. I love to write. I love to create stuff. I don't try and despite what anybody thinks, I don't try and create controversy. I don't believe in it. I simply say what I mean. And look, trust me, I hold back on some stuff. So yeah, I have a lot of fun doing it, and I hope to be doing it until the day that I retire or can't write anymore. But I don't see that day coming at any point.
I'm not going to come at you about Bristol because I feel like you're not too far off base. I agree that it should be invite only. But I see both sides of the coin about being there. I think the prestige of it and the talk and, the fans wanting it, I think that's too big of a draw for them to not go there. In terms of like the racing we're going to get and the product, I don't know how good it's going to be. So I can certainly see both sides of the coin, but as we go forward, when are we going to hear more about SprintCarUnlimited.tv, the schedule, what's next? Where can people sign up? Kind of give me all that elevator pitch stuff.
Well, I'm actually going to release our 18 races today. There'll be 2 releases. We have 2 tracks that have come on board for their events, and so we're going to take care of that today. You just sign up the day of the event or the day before. Purchase the race. I think right now, as of now, our first race will be March 20th. So you can figure out who that is. But we're going to have different releases throughout the season. Throughout the season, they start today, and you could see something come out of this that benefits the racers, because as much as we want to help the racetracks and we want to still be there for the fans and provide a service, we want to help the race car drivers. And depending what happens over the next 2 days, you could see another release next week or the following week that is really beneficial to the racers. So it's going to be a lot going on, but it starts today with some of the releases on Facebook, Twitter, and my site as to some of the dates that we have.
Nice. All right. Well, SprintCarUnlimited.com, SprintCarUnlimited.tv. Jeremy, thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on, and I have no problem admitting that you were part in me stealing your idea.